Welcome everyone to today's Explainer. We've got a really fascinating historical journey ahead of us. To truly understand the modern geopolitical landscape of South Asia, we have to look back at the political dominoes that fell between 1906 and 1939. We're going to keep this strictly to the historical facts. No taking sides, just diving into the raw source material to see how every action sparked a massive reaction. Let's get right into it.
So this timeline is essentially a dense political chess match, and it naturally breaks down into 5 key phases: seeds of political identity, pacts and protests, the constitutional tug-of-war, visions of a new future, and finally, the breaking point.
Let's start with Phase 1, seeds of political identity, right around the start of the 20th century. The catalyst for all of this happened on October 1st, 1906. An influential delegation of 35 Muslim leaders headed by Sir Aga Khan traveled to meet Viceroy Lord Minto, and they definitely didn't show up empty-handed. They went in to present some very crucial demands. Now notice how highly specific these requests were. Because of their minority status, they asked for separate electorates, but they also pushed for quotas in government jobs, the appointment of Muslim judges, extra seats in the legislative assemblies, and for MAO College to get full university status. And honestly, it worked. The Viceroy actually listened and assured the delegation their requests wouldn't just be ignored.
That meeting set off a huge chain reaction. The success of the Simla deputation gave the community the confidence to form an actual political party. Just months later, the All India Muslim League was officially born in Dhaka. Fast forward to 1909, and the Minto-Morley reforms literally made their core demand for separate electorates the law of the land. Moving right along to Phase 2, pacts and protests. A period of brief unity followed by total turbulence.
Jump to 1916. The Muslim League and the Indian National Congress actually held a joint session in Lucknow, and they reached a pretty historic agreement. Congress formally accepted the League's demand for separate electorates, and they locked in 1/3 Muslim representation in the Central Council. It was a really rare, optimistic moment of constitutional harmony.
And that unity kept building. It peaked around 1919 with the Khilafat movement, which was aimed at protecting the Ottoman Caliphate. Gandhi even joined the cause, and Hindu-Muslim unity was at an absolute high. But man, things got chaotic fast. You had around 18,000 Muslims attempting a disastrous migration to Afghanistan because they were told India wasn't safe anymore. The whole movement basically collapsed after Gandhi suddenly called it off following violence in Chauri Chaura in 1922. And then Turkey just abolished the Caliphate entirely. Our sources note that this really forced a harsh lesson in political maturity.
Which brings us to Phase 3, the constitutional tug-of-war. This is where we shift into the crucial decades of the 1920s and 30s, and things start getting really intense. The late 20s brought a rapid-fire sequence of events. The British sent over the Simon Commission in 1927 to suggest reforms, but they literally didn't include a single Indian member. So, naturally, everyone boycotted it. The British then challenged Indian leaders to write their own constitution instead. That led to the Narrow Report in 1928, which immediately triggered a massive counter-response in 1929.
It was an incredibly high-stakes game of political ping-pong. The Narrow Report basically rolled back the gains from the Lucknow Pact, pushing for joint electorates instead of separate ones, and making Hindi the official language. In response, Quaid-e-Azam Muhammad Ali Jinnah stepped up with his famous 14 points. The texts describe these as moderate but firm counter-demands, keeping separate electorates, protecting that 1/3 representation, and demanding real constitutional protection for Muslim culture.
Phase 4, visions of a new future.
This idea right here was a massive turning point. It's 1930 at the Muslim League's annual session, and the philosopher Allama Iqbal gives his presidential address. He flat out demands the establishment of a consolidated Muslim state in the Northwest. Think about how huge that is. It's the very first time a separate state is demanded directly from the Muslim League's platform. While Iqbal is laying out that new vision, the British are back on London desperately trying to fix the constitutional deadlock. They hold 3 separate roundtable conferences between 1930 and 1932, but they all fizzle out without solving the minorities issue at all. Our texts point to Gandhi's rigid stance, especially during the second conference, where he insisted India was just one single nation, making compromise essentially impossible.
With the Indian leaders completely deadlocked, the British decided to just impose their own solutions. First was the 1932 Communal Award, which the Muslim League absolutely rejected because it mathematically reduced Muslim majorities in places like Punjab and Bengal into minorities. Next up was the 1935 Government of India Act. It promised a federal system and provincial autonomy, but it was so heavily flawed that the federal portion was literally never put into effect. Nobody was happy with it.
And that leads us straight into our final chapter, Phase 5, the breaking point.
The crucial number you need to remember for this era is 8. After the new act, provincial elections were held in 1937. The Muslim League did okay. They won 108 reserved seats. But Congress just swept the board. They formed exclusive provincial ministries in 8 out of the 11 provinces and completely refused to form any sort of coalition governments with the League.
What followed was a total breakdown in trust. According to the source texts, these Congress ministries rolled out a series of actions that deeply alienated Muslims. They hoisted their own party flags on government buildings, and they enforced the singing of Bande Matram, a song with negative imagery toward Muslims. They also introduced educational programs like the Vidya Mandira and Warda schemes. Our sources detail how these policies were perceived as direct attempts to erase Muslim culture and force Hindu nationalism onto students. People fundamentally felt their way of life was under attack.
This unbelievable tension really only broke because of World War II. In 1939, the British dragged India into the war without asking, so all those Congress ministries resigned in protest. For Muslims, the relief of those ministries stepping down was so profound that Jinnah actually called on everyone to peacefully observe December 22, 1939 as a day of deliverance.
So, think about it. By the end of 1939, that constitutional bridge we've been talking about was completely reduced to ashes. We've traced the whole journey, from the early specific demands of the Simla deputation all the way to the total alienation felt under Congress rule. It leaves us with one massive question to ponder. With all trust gone by 1939, was the 1940 Lahore Resolution and the ultimate partition of the subcontinent simply inevitable? Thank you so much for tuning into this explainer, and keep questioning the history around you.